In this video, we're going to talk about eBay standard envelope shipping, the cheapest way to send low-end cards to customers. And I'm going to also share a little bit about how I am packaging my cards when I send them off to ship through eBay standard shipping. So let's get into this. So if you're watching this video, I assume you already know what eBay standard envelope shipping is, but just a really quick run through with it. It's basically eBay has made a deal, an arrangement, a collaboration with the US Postal Service in order to be able to send low-end collectibles cards mostly. I think they also do it with a few other categories. It's mostly trading cards and coins and a couple other categories. Basically what it is anything that sells for $20 or under that is a trading card can be shipped in a standard envelope with a printed label for much cheaper. So most of the time if you're doing first class mail, you're getting a package in a bubble mailer or something, you're gonna be paying like $5 shipping, something like that. This allows people to send it for $1 or less. It depends on the weight, but 84 cents for 2 ounces, $1.08 for 3 ounces. And it also insures the cards up to $20 because supposedly I think the idea is they trust this process, and if the card doesn't show up at its final destination, they reimburse the seller. Straightforward, it's quite easy, and then the buyer doesn't lose out. eBay loses out. It's basically if eBay's system, if their collaboration didn't work for that particular card, then they're the ones who lose out on it. It's kind of like they're saying like we believe this is going to work, and it's not a huge loss for them because it probably doesn't get lost that often. But this makes it a lot more possible for people to buy and sell lower end cards. Without it, it's really difficult. If you want to buy a $2 card, but you have to pay $5 in shipping, that $2 card is suddenly a $7 card. And for a lot of cards, that's not worth it at all. I'd be happy to spend $2 on a certain card, but not $7. I'd rather wait and get it on ComC or get it at a card show or something else. I would never buy a $2 card on eBay if I was paying $5 shipping. Never. Get it on unless it was a $7 card that I would have paid $7 for. So eBay standard shipping is wonderful. I think it's a really good program. It's not without its flaws though. It does provide a certain kind of tracking number, but it's not tracked in the same way that other USPS mail is tracked. So you can't go into the USPS service with the tracking number and figure out where the card is. It's kind of a mystery. You get a tracking number and then you don't know what happens to it until it arrives. It's almost as if there is no tracking number. It's just like this little illusion of a tracking number. And it also can take a really long time. I'm dealing with an issue right now of a card I sold 15 days ago, or he shipped out 15 days ago, and the seller and I are communicating right now because he still hasn't got it yet. So I think this doesn't happen with first class mail. This can happen with standard envelope. I know from watching J-Mac's YouTube sports card channel that he has this kind of situation happen a lot where he gets people, customers who are writing him and saying, it's been 10 days, it's been 2 weeks, my card still hasn't arrived, what's going on? And then he's just has to kind of explain to them the situation like I've done with the recent person, and the buyer is super reasonable and is wonderful. So it's just sometimes this happens with the eBay standard envelope shipping for whatever reason. I really don't know what goes on behind the scenes at the post office that can make this kind of delay, but it seems to not be super uncommon. So if you are using this to buy or to sell, you kind of have to expect that a little bit. But eBay does have something like once it's been 15 days after the shipping label was printed, if it still hasn't arrived, you are at that point eligible to file a claim. And because these are insured up to $20, and you can only send cards up to $20, then you will get reimbursed. The buyer will get reimbursed, so nobody will lose out. So that's nice. That insurance makes this like, even if there is a hassle, it's a minor hassle. It's not like a major issue if something does happen with the system, which I really appreciate that. I honestly probably wouldn't use this program if they didn't have that insurance policy, because it's so easy for a card that's just in an envelope to get lost or damaged. It's much easier than if it's in a bubble mailer, and you can put in some like nice hard cardboard and a bunch of other stuff, like you're safe, you're gonna be good. But if you put it in an envelope with a little less protection, there's a higher chance that there's gonna be some damage happens to the card. Luckily, if it's a low-end card and the buyer does get their money back, a card at that price usually is going to be something that they can find elsewhere. It's unfortunate for the buyer and for the seller alike if this happens, but at least it's for these lower end cards where the buyer can probably go and find that same card elsewhere after they've gotten their money back, and it's just like an annoying inconvenience for a little while that just passes by, and it's not a big deal to most of us, so that's okay. But besides those potential hiccups, I actually think this is a genius program because, I think this makes it so that eBay becomes the place to sell some of these lower end kinds of cards that are $1 or $2 that you just can't sell anywhere else. If you sell them on ComSeat, you have to pay a 50-cent per card ingestion. So for a card worth $1 or $2, oftentimes it's not worth it. If you sell it in some of the other online marketplaces, maybe they don't take any kind of like percentage, I know my slabs takes 1% of sales. I think buysportscards.com, I think is what it's called. I don't think they take any percentage. I don't know how it works exactly. I'm not as familiar. Sportlots take some percentage. But because of the shipping, sending from any of those places, as far as I know, unless I'm unaware of some program they have, makes it hard to sell cards that are $1 or $2. eBay has kind of like carved out for themselves a monopoly in the lower end card game, unless you're doing large lots where you would be willing to spend more money on shipping because you're getting hundreds or thousands or whatever of cards at a time. So the fact that eBay's done this, I think, is really, from a business idea for them, genius. Especially, if they have the connections to be able to make that kind of relationship with the US Post Office, which cannot be an easy kind of collaboration to have. That's pretty amazing. And it can be a little weird, like when you receive a card and it's like in this envelope, it just feel like it must be getting damaged. But so far I've been buying a lot and sending a lot, selling a lot, and I haven't had any issues with anything getting damaged yet. Here's one I just got in the mail a little while ago. I got this with like 3 or 4 other cards, and they were able to send it through eBay standard envelope shipping, 4 cards together. They had it in a card saver, and it came just fine. Nothing was bent. Everything was okay, and that's happened every time. Pretty much however it's been packaged, it's always come across okay so far, and I haven't gotten any words from any of my customers that they've had any issues with what I've shipped to them, except positive feedback so far. So it seems like it's a pretty good situation, and if it doesn't work, you get reimbursed, so whatever, it's okay. Now next, I thought what would be nice is to just share with you how I am packing cards when I'm sending it through eBay standard shipping. I'm not doing it the same as I have to be thoughtful. You can't go so thick, you can't be too rigid. There's some different guidelines behind it, so you kind of have to be a little bit careful, but I'll share with you what I'm doing when I'm shipping out a card or a small bit of cards. So if I'm going to ship a card through eBay standard envelope shipping, basically besides the card, usually I will have 2 top loaders, a team bag, a piece of paper, or even a half a piece of paper, have some tape on hand, and then an envelope. And then essentially, this is what I do. So I'll take the card and I'll put it in the top loader. Now some people have said, and this might be wise advice, that a card saver is better than a top loader for this, just because it's not so rigid, so it's less likely to have any issues at the post office. There's a chance if it's too rigid, the post office might send it back, return to sender, saying, you need to pay some extra postage or something. I haven't had to do that. I did that one time. It wasn't sent back to me, but I did pay some extra because it was a little bit more rigid than the other one. So they asked me if I could pay an extra 40 cents, and I went ahead and did it. But if you have this, you'll never have an issue like that. And I have seen, like, I received a pack of maybe 5 cards, and they were all in here. And that made that, because it was 5, it made it pretty sturdy, and it seemed to work okay too. I'm mostly not using card savers because, one, I want a little bit of rigidity, just because I figure, like, if it does bend, like, this will protect it from bending at least somewhat, and this won't protect it from bending at all. I know that the post office prefers it that way. The other reason is because these cost me more money, and I have so many top loaders, I don't even know what to do with them. So that's one of the reasons I use the top loaders as well. And I oftentimes will use 2. Like I put it in one top loader, but then I'm using a second one just to give it some extra rigidity. If I didn't have a ton of extra top loaders, I might not bother with that. Because I know it does make it just a little bit thicker, and I know the post office can be a little bit sensitive about everything. But then I'll put it inside of a team bag, and I think this part is actually quite important, better than putting a piece of painter's tape or something over the top of the top loader, just because this creates a safe from the elements, basically. So I'll close that, look like this, and then I'll have a piece of paper, sometimes half a piece of paper, and I will fold it up. I will fold this up inside of the paper. I'll usually make it look a little nicer. Sometimes I'll even write a little personal message on there, like "thanks for buying," or if I really like the card or the player, I might make mention of it or something like that, just to give a little personal connection. I don't always do that, just if I don't have too many orders, if I'm less busy. So then when I do that, I will close it with a single piece of tape. I don't like to overdo the tape. A little bit of tape is fine, but overdoing the tape is kind of annoying for me as a customer as well. So now, you know, this will go in here, no problem. Now I use larger than necessary envelopes, and I know some people will put it in there and then fold it, but because the thickness is an issue in eBay standard envelopes, I'm a little careful not to do that. So what I actually do now, this is just something I've started recently, is I don't want this to move around. So I'll either fold the paper so that it's the same length as the envelope so the paper doesn't slide around, and then I'll tape with 1 or 2 pieces of tape, I'll tape it down inside the paper better. Or what I've been doing more recently is just going like this and putting it in there, because then it just prevents it from sliding around. So the less it slides, the better. And then of course, open that up, close that, boom. The label's gone on there, and then it goes off, and it's like 84 cents or something. You can see it's thin, so it's gonna go through as long as it can go through the little slots for the metered letters or the stamped letters envelope. It should be a problem. I've never had a problem except for the very first time when the post office asked me to add 40 cents, and then they put a little thing on there said, you know, they'll organize it by hand. Otherwise, it's never been an issue, and so far they've all arrived. So that's kind of how I send it off. A lot of people will use this, which is fine too. I just don't have nearly as many of those, so I'm not gonna do that. So anyway, that's kind of my process. Is it perfect? No, I mean, there is clearly the potential for damage when you're sending a card that's something that's so thin, that's not too rigid, that doesn't have a whole lot of protection. There's definitely possibilities. I could see plenty of times when it could result in a damaged card, even if the shipper is as careful as they can be. I think it's just the nature of this particular program that there's gonna be some that don't do so well, but I think it's worth it. As a buyer and a seller, you know, I feel like it's worth it. I am very happy to spend $1 shipping on the off chance that maybe I'll end up having to get reimbursed 2 weeks later instead of getting the card, which is annoyance, but it's not that big of a deal. It's an extra couple clicks of a couple buttons. It's not a huge thing. And then I hope that it just will never happen. I haven't had to do that yet. Hopefully this one person that I have from my eBay store that bought a card that still hasn't arrived 2 weeks later, hopefully they're just gonna get it in a couple of days. I really hope. I don't want to, yeah, anyway, you're always gonna deal with something, you know, once you get to doing certain things at a certain scale. But I still think it's a great program. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are about the eBay standard envelope shipping. If you've learned anything about how to pack it, you know, in ways that you feel is the most effective and cost efficient and all this kind of thing, or if when you've received things, if you've seen it done in any particularly good way or any challenges you've faced with it. I think it's a really good program. I'm very happy it exists despite its flaws. But anyway, that's it for this video. See you in the next one. Peace.